Hey everyone, ready to dive in. Today, we're tackling OCD. You know, obsessive-compulsive disorder.
Yeah, excited to dig into this one.
I'm thinking you're probably way past the whole hand-washing thing based on what you sent over. You're looking for the deeper stuff, right? The whys and hows.
Absolutely. It's way more than just liking things neat, that's for sure. It's really fascinating the way OCD takes hold, the impact it has on people. It's pretty huge.
So let's break it down a bit. When we talk obsessions and compulsions, what are we really talking about? For someone who's hearing this for the first time, maybe.
Okay, so obsessions, they're these thoughts. But not just any thoughts. They're unwanted, intrusive, like images popping up or urges, and you didn't ask for any of it.
And it's distressing.
Super distressing. It's not a thought that passes. It's like this nagging feeling that something awful will happen if.
So it's like a song stuck in your head, but instead of a tune, it's this thought that just won't quit, and it makes you anxious.
Perfect analogy. And because of that anxiety, people start doing compulsions. These are the actions, the rituals, anything to make the thought go away.
So to recap, the thoughts, the obsession, the ritual to stop it is the compulsion.
Exactly. It's this cycle. Obsession makes you anxious, so you have to do the compulsion, which helps, but only for a bit. Then the thought comes right back.
Starting to get the picture now. You mentioned earlier that the impact of all this is actually pretty big. What's an example of how this plays out in someone's life, like day to day?
Oh, for sure. One article you sent mentioned a woman struggling with religious scrupulosity.
Yeah.
It's where someone's fixated on religious stuff, but in an OCD way.
Heavy stuff.
Yeah. She was constantly worried about sinning, even tiny things. Felt she had to pray for hours to make up for it. Ended up isolating herself. Work suffered. Even got really depressed.
It's kind of heartbreaking. It shows how OCD isn't just a quirk. It affects your whole life.
Exactly. And people get it wrong all the time, thinking it's just being neat or something. It goes way deeper.
Something that struck me, you mentioned different types of obsessions, right? Not all the same.
Right. The mechanism, the thought compulsion cycle, that's the same. But what those thoughts are about totally varies.
So not just germs and washing hands then?
Nope. Contamination's common, yeah. But some people, it's symmetry, order, everything's got to be just so. Others, it's thoughts about harming people themselves, even though they don't want to.
Like their brain's throwing these awful thoughts at them, even if they know it's not really them.
Exactly. That's what makes it so bad. These thoughts go against who they are. So much inner conflict. It's really tough.
Okay, so tons of obsessions, and I'm guessing tons of compulsions too. Any example that really stands out, just to illustrate?
The checking compulsions, they always get to me. Imagine needing to check locks, appliances, over and over and over.
I mean, we've all double-checked a lock before leaving the house, right? But this is different.
Totally different. It consumes them. It's not a quick glance. It's ritualistic, hours wasted, checking a lock 50 times, going back to the stove even though you know it's off.
Wow. That helps me understand compulsion a lot better. So the thoughts, the rituals, and that anxiety cycle. But the big question, the one I know you're after from your research, it's the why. Why do people get this in the first place?
The million-dollar question. No easy answer, sadly. But your research had some cool stuff.
All right, hit me with it. What are the top theories about this whole OCD thing starting?
First off, genes seem to matter. Runs in families, so there's probably something hereditary going on.
So if your parent has it, you're more likely, but not guaranteed, right?
Yeah, genes are just one piece. The brain itself is a big focus too. How it's built, how it works.
Wait, are we talking actual physical differences in the brains of people with OCD?
Yep. Studies show some abnormalities, particularly in certain brain circuits.
Hold on. Brain circuits. Explain that like I'm 5.
Okay, so different brain parts do different jobs, right? They talk to each other through these pathways, the circuits. In OCD, some circuits, especially ones for decision-making, habit forming, they're not running smoothly.
Like a traffic jam up there, messing with thoughts and actions.
Nailed it. And then there's neurotransmitters, the messengers between brain cells.
Sensing a theme here. Brains are complicated.
Understatement. But for OCD, the imbalance in some of them, like serotonin, which helps with mood, anxiety, that's a factor too.
So genes, how the brain's built, and now the chemicals within it, it's like a recipe for vulnerability.
Exactly. But get this, your research also pointed to environmental stuff playing a role.
Okay, now we're getting complex. What kind of environmental are we talking?
Think of it this way. You might have the genes, the brain stuff, but it takes a trigger from outside to set it off.
Like a seed needs the right conditions to sprout.
Perfect. Stressful stuff, trauma, like abuse, death, even big life changes.
Yeah.
They can flip the switch.
So you could be carrying this predisposition, but not get full-blown OCD until something bad happens.
Right. Stress activates what was already there. And there's this condition, PANDAS.
Pandas. That sounds kind of cute for something related to this.
It's a mouthful. Pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorders associated with streptococcal infections. Basically, kids get OCD symptoms after a strep infection, like strep throat.
Hold on. Their body fighting the infection messes with their brain.
That's the theory, still being studied. But it shows triggers come from weird places sometimes.
Never heard of that. Fascinating, but also scary. So the why of OCD is a mix. Genes, brain, and life all rolled into one. Everyone's experience is unique, I guess.
Totally. No single answer. What triggers one person might not do a thing to another.
Each person's got their own puzzle to solve.
And that's why it's vital to look at their whole story, what's unique to them.
Man, this is a lot. From hand-washing jokes to brain circuits and strep throat. What are you thinking as we unpack all this?
How connected it all is. It's not one cause for OCD. It's everything together.
What?
And that helps us figure out treatment and support, which is good news.
Totally. Speaking of treatment, that's where we're headed next, right? The what now after all this why stuff.
Let's do it. Because there is hope. There are things that work for people with OCD.
Okay, so OCD, it's this big puzzle. Genes, brain stuff, what happens to you? It's a lot, but honestly, all this talk can get kind of heavy.
Yeah.
So let's talk solutions. You're really into this in the research, right? How do we help people manage OCD, take back their lives? That's got to be hopeful.
It is. OCD is treatable. There's a lot we can do. That's the good news.
Good to hear. So what are we talking about here? What helps?
Two main things from what you sent, therapy and meds. Often they work best together.
Okay, unpack that. Therapy first. What kind are you talking about?
The best one, the gold standard for OCD, it's a type of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, but specifically it's ERP, exposure and response prevention.
Full disclosure, I'm lost already with the acronyms. What's ERP in plain English? How's it work?
No worries, it's simpler than it sounds. Break it down.
Yeah.
Exposure, that means facing your fears, but slowly, safely, with a therapist.
But like if you're scared of germs, you'd start by touching something dirty, but with a therapist there.
Right. Little by little, you're exposed to what makes you anxious. The point is to show you that nothing bad happens. Like you touch the dirty thing, you don't get sick.
Makes sense. That's exposure. What about the response prevention part?
That's the key. You resist doing the compulsion, the ritual. So in our example, you touch the thing, but you don't wash your hands right away. You sit with the anxiety.
Man, that's got to be tough, like fighting your own instincts.
Oh, it is. It takes a lot of guts.
Yeah.
But with a therapist's help, you learn to handle the anxiety without the ritual. It's like retraining your brain.
Retraining, you said, makes me think of those brain circuits we talked about. Is that connected?
Totally. ERP changes those circuits. You do the exposure, skip the ritual, your brain learns a new way to react. The fear link weakens, you get better at handling the uncertainty.
Cool. So breaking the fear ritual cycle. But I saw in your research that CBT for OCD, it's more than just ERP.
Right, you're sharp. There's also cognitive restructuring. It's about tackling the thoughts themselves, the ones causing the obsession.
So you help someone see that their fears, they might be way bigger in their head than in reality.
Exactly. You look at the thoughts closely, like under a microscope. Is this really true? What's the proof? Often it's just messed up thinking, not facts.
Got it. ERP changes what you do. Cognitive restructuring changes what you think. Two sides of the same coin.
Perfect summary. Change the action, change the thought. Together, that's powerful stuff.
We talked about meds working alongside therapy, right? What do they do for OCD?
Meds can be a lifesaver, literally, especially with therapy. They lower the anxiety, the obsession strength, makes it easier to do the therapy work and make progress.
Like meds give you breathing room, so therapy can actually get in there and do its thing.
Nailed it again. Most common ones are SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, they're called.
SSRIs, that's for depression, isn't it?
Yeah, they are. But turns out they work really well for OCD, too. It's all about serotonin, remember?
Yeah.
That brain chemical for mood, anxiety.
Right, right. So SSRIs get those levels, right? Which makes the obsessions and compulsions less intense.
That's the idea. No guarantees, doesn't work for everyone, but for many people, it really helps them live better.
There were other meds mentioned in your research too, right? What about those?
Yeah, SSRIs are the first choice, usually. But sometimes others are used, like tricyclic antidepressants or even anxiety meds. Alone or with SSRIs, depends on the person, how bad it is, how they respond to the first treatment.
Sounds like it takes some trial and error to find what works.
It can, yeah. That's where a good therapist or psychiatrist comes in. They figure out your needs, look at your history, and together you come up with a plan that fits you.
A team effort.
Definitely. And don't forget, you're in charge. If something's not working, speak up, ask questions, work with your doctor to get it right.
Love that. It's your journey. You got to be in the driver's seat. Now, aside from therapy and meds, any other tips, resources that you think matter for people with OCD?
Tons. Recovery's more than just those two. Support groups, for one, they're huge.
Support groups, yeah, makes sense.
Right. Meeting others who get it, sharing stories, realizing you're not alone. That's powerful.
Community, feeling understood.
Exactly. No more isolation, no more shame, which are big with OCD. There was this one guy in a study you sent. He kept his OCD secret for years, so ashamed.
Oh, man.
Yeah. But when he finally told his family, joined a group, it was like a weight off his shoulders.
Sharing your story, knowing others get it, that's got to be freeing.
Big time. And beyond groups, education's crucial. For people with OCD, their families, everyone. Learning about it, why it happens, how it's treated, that gives you power, you know?
I was reading in some forums you share, people were so frustrated because they didn't get it, didn't even know OCD was a real thing, let alone treatable.
That's why we got to spread the word. Knowledge busts myths, and it helps everyone support each other better.
Speaking of myths, something you really hit on was self-care. It's not just fighting symptoms, it's taking care of yourself as a whole person.
So important. Having OCD, it takes a lot out of you, body and mind both.
So what helps? What self-care stuff matters most, in your opinion?
Varies for everyone, but the basics are huge. Exercise, sleep, good food, managing stress. Simple stuff, but it changes your whole mood, which helps you handle the OCD better.
So finding those things that recharge you, running, nature, music, friends, whatever works.
Exactly. Taking care of yourself inside and out, and remembering that's not selfish. It's necessary, especially with OCD.
I'm struck by all the good stuff we've talked about. Treatments, resources, shows that even though OCD is tough, you can learn to live with it, have a good life. What hits you the hardest out of all this?
You know, it's the idea that recovery's a journey, not a finish line. It's not curing OCD. It's learning to manage it, to have a good life despite it. And there's help out there for people on that path.
Well said. And on that note, I think we're ready to wrap up, give our final thoughts on everything we've learned about OCD today.
Wow, we've really been through the ringer with OCD today, huh?
Yeah. Intrusive thoughts, all those compulsions, the brain science, even strep throat. Who knew?
We've covered it all, from hand washing to brain circuits to support groups, and even taking care of yourself. It's been quite the journey. So now that we're here at the end, what's sticking with you?
You know, I'm thinking that even though we don't have one answer for what causes OCD, just knowing the possibilities, the genes, the brain stuff, what happens in life, it's like now we have a place to start to figure out treatment to help people.
It's like having all these tools, right? And maybe meds help calm things down in the brain. Then AARP helps rewire it, and changing how you think about those scary thoughts. That's where the cognitive restructuring comes in.
And then you add in the support groups, taking care of yourself. It makes me think, okay, there is a way forward. It might not be easy, but it's there.
Absolutely. And one thing that really jumped out at me from your research, it's the idea that OCD isn't the same for everyone. It's a spectrum, you know?
Oh, yeah. One of those studies even mentioned that some folks only have OCD symptoms in certain places, like only at work or around specific people.
Yeah.
Wild, right?
It really shows you how treatment needs to be personalized. What helps one person might not do a thing for another. It's not a one-size-fits-all thing at all.
Definitely highlights why it's so important to get professional help if you think you might have OCD. A good therapist, they can figure out what's going on with you specifically, make a plan that fits.
Couldn't agree more. And remember, asking for help is never a bad thing. It takes strength to do that, to say, I want to get better. It's about taking charge of your own well-being.
Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive today, I want to leave everyone with this thought. We've seen how complicated OCD is, how many things are at play. How does this change the way we think about mental health overall, you know?
Ooh, that's a big one. I think it tells us to stop looking for easy answers. The human experience, it's messy. Mental health, it's as important as our physical health. We got to treat it that way.
So well said. And on that note, we're signing off. Hope you found this deep dive helpful, informative, maybe even a little inspiring.
Remember, knowing more is always good. When we understand something, then we can be there for each other, support each other better, especially for those dealing with OCD. They deserve that.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Until next time.